Good morning, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to chapel this week. We can't wait to worship and for you guys to hear the word. Before we get our service started, I do have a few announcements and updates on what's going on here and around campus. First off, your mask. We want to make sure you guys are still wearing your mask. If you're going from one building to another, make sure you have your mask on and over your mouth and your nose. And especially if you're in buildings, make sure you have this on at all times. If you're in your car, just going from one spot to another, that's fine if you don't want to wear your mask, but make sure you have this on at any point if you're outside. QR codes, make sure you're scanning those in when you enter a different building, maybe the cafeteria, your dorm. Make sure you're always scanning on the CU app. That way we know where you've been in case you get exposed or you gotta be quarantined. This week also is CU Outdoors Week. You can follow the CU Student Life Instagram or Facebook to see what's going on each day. Next week is going to be Missions Week. You can go to the Campbellsville University social medias to see what's going on every day next week, the 5th through the 9th. Intramural leagues. You can sign up for intramurals on imleagues.com. You can see all the sports we got to offer this season. If you and some buddies, you guys want to play, you guys can go and get a team together. We encourage you to do that. We're almost ready for the service to start. We can't wait to experience this with you and what God's going to do throughout this semester via our online service. We hope you enjoy the service, and we're only a couple minutes from starting.
I've been held in your hands from the moment that I wake up until I lay my head. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, and in darkest nights, you were close like no other. I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. 'Cause your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I'll sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you have been faithful, and all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. Oh, I will sing of the goodness of God. You are my champion, and giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you've won, I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I'm seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. I've tried so hard to see it, took me so long to believe it, that you choose someone like me to carry your victory. Perfection could never teaching me how to receive it, so let all the striving cease. This is my victory. You were my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I lift my voice and shout, every wall comes crashing down. I have the authority Jesus has given me. When I open up my mouth, miracles start breaking out. I have the authority Jesus has given me. You are my champion. Giants fall when you stand undefeated. Every battle you won. I am who you say I am. You crown me with confidence. I am seated in the heavenly place, undefeated, with the one who has conquered it all.
Welcome to Chapel at Campbellsville University. My name is Trent Creason. I'm the Director of Student Activities, teach at Little Adjunct faculty in the Theology Department, and also serve as an Associate Pastor at Lowell Avenue Baptist Church. I'm excited to be with you today. We're in a little bit different location. This is CU Outdoors Week, and so we're out here at Clay Hill Memorial Forest. You may hear some cars passing by or some birds in the background, but just allow that to be part of the experience as we get together today and get in God's Word. We're going to be in the book of John, chapter 4, so if you want to take a look at that or have that near you, that's fine as well. But I want to welcome you, whatever platform you may be watching from today. Excited to be with you during this time. As I mentioned, it is CU Outdoors Week, which is a time where we provide a lot of opportunities for students to engage and just really enjoy the outdoors, learn about it. And for me, I've always loved the outdoors, as far as I can remember back. It's something that was really instilled to me through my family. We would bike or we might hike. We were fishing. We were doing something outside all the time. And you know, it's been really interesting during this pandemic, during COVID-19, really how much of an attention the outdoors has received. In the disconnect that the pandemic has caused, people have really been spending a lot more time outside and finding a way to connect to nature, even connect with others through that. And as my love of the outdoors has grown, it's really overflowed into the lives that are around me. And some of those that are impacted the most by it is my direct family. I have 3 small kids, and we love to get outside. We love to hike. And for whatever reason, this summer, I made the goal with my family that we're going to hike somewhere once a week. And I tell you what, it made a lot of adventures, whether that was dealing with copperhead snakes, thunderstorms in the middle of the woods, or figuring out how to get a 2-year-old to hike a few miles. It was an adventure. But what I began to see, and what I was really hoping for, is that we would not only connect with nature or enjoy a great experience or arrive at an awesome destination like a waterfall, but that we would have an opportunity to connect with the ones that we love. And that is what stood out to me the most during our time and our hikes, as the connection that we were making as a family. And I want to present an idea to you today. What if everything that we have, what if everything that we are that makes us tick and how we work, or the things that we're interested in, the circumstances that surround us, what if all those things are not just about the moment we're in, or the circumstance we're facing, or even the destination we're hoping to get to? What if it's about being connected to someone, connected to God? Because just like the trail and the hikes, served as a purpose and a way for me to connect with my family this summer, God desires us to be connected to Him. And that's what I want to look at today. Whether you come out Clay Hill, do a little hiking around here, a great way to connect with other people and connect with nature, just like it's going down a path or a hiking trail. It's almost like God has given us these sacred pathways to relate with Him and to be with Him. And I think this passage in John chapter 4 really brings out some key principles about what that is. And I want to share that with you today. So we're going to look in John chapter 4, and I'm really going to start in verse 6. Because something that's really interesting about Jesus in general is how people just wanted to be near Him. They wanted to connect with Him. You can see that there's this built-in thing about all of us, that we desire connection. Even the most introverted person out there desires connection to be with others. And you can see it, over and over and over again in the Gospels. It will talk about how Jesus was flocked and people crowded around Him. And while there might have been multiple reasons they were wanting to do that, there was this inward need for them to connect and to be near Him. I think of Mark chapter 6. There's a verse, I think verse 56 says, "They begged Him to let them touch even the edge of His cloak, and all who touched it were healed." And so today I want to talk about this connection and talk about some of the pathways that God really gives us to relate with Him and to be in connection with Him. And John chapter 4 is a great story to look at that. We'll start in verse 6, and I'll just read a few of these, and we'll talk about it as we go. But it says in verse 6, "Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as He was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon," so the middle of the day, hot time of day. Verse 7, "When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, 'Will you give me a drink?' The Samaritan woman said to Him, 'You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?'" Now I want to stop right there, because already you can see that there are some disconnections that are being dealt with in this story. When you look at the time frame that this lady is coming to the well, it reveals some disconnections that she's experiencing in her life. First, a social disconnection. We're going to learn a little bit more about her, and you may be familiar with this story already, but see it basically as social outcast because of the relationships she has chosen to have, the way she has chosen to live her life. That's why she's going to the well in the middle of the day. She's socially disconnected, and that doesn't feel good. We've experienced social disconnection these past several months, and it's made you deal with anxiety or frustration. Maybe you even forgot how to talk to people in this time face to face. But being socially disconnected is a challenge. There are all kinds of obstacles. Even when you're around people right now, you might have a mask, or you have to be so many feet apart. And she has experienced this social disconnection. And you see Jesus kind of breaking that barrier with that. But also you see a cultural or a cultural aspect to the disconnect that she has. She brings it up. Jesus sits down, who is a Jew, and she says, "Why are you even really talking to me? First of all, you're a man, and second of all, Samaritans and Jews don't really hang out." There's a cultural breakdown of how we view each other and how we respect one another. And you don't have to look far in our community and our world to see that sort of disconnect that we have with each other. Whether it be whatever it might be, whatever situation or tension, we're really good at not liking each other or getting along with one another. And there's a disconnect. But the biggest disconnect that maybe she's not even aware of is that spiritual component. And that's where Jesus begins to move into this conversation a little deeper and allow us to see that really we all have a desire, we all have this built-in need to connect, and we all are dealing with this huge amount of disconnection. But there is a connection of uttermost importance, and that is with the Creator, the God that made you. And so he goes on and he says in verse 10, Jesus answered, If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. Jesus makes it pretty clear throughout his time on earth what all of life is about. In fact, there's a guy who tries to trick him really and ask him the question, what is the greatest commandment? And Jesus says to love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, strength, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. So really all of this, everything that you are, everything that you do, everything that you're about, even the things that really just get you going, is about and for the purpose of loving God and experiencing his love. And Jesus is revealing that to this lady. He's helping her see that, yeah, you're disconnected. And you feel that. You feel alone. You feel tore apart. But it's rooted in something much more than just the social aspect of your life or even what's going on with you culturally. It's rooted in this relationship with your Creator, with your God, that you're disconnected from him. And I can give you, if you only realized who you're talking to, I can give you something that will actually satisfy. I can give you something that will actually fill the void that you have. And she says in verse 7, Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? We do that a lot. We doubt a lot. We question a lot. And really, we in this generation, this culture, have available to us so much information that we're always gauging, is this legit? Can I trust this? Is this good? Is this bad? As an activities director, this is probably one of the number one things I deal with students. You guys are always looking for what's the best thing, and you're going to wait till the last minute to really commit to coming to something because there might be something better that might show up. And she's really questioning Jesus' ability here. Can you really do this, And he goes on in verse 12 and says, she says, Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered, Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again. But whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. He's saying this is a connection that doesn't just satisfy or just doesn't meet the need or the moment. It will overflow. Really, that's the record that Jesus shows a lot in his experiences with the disciples. Think about when he feeds all of those. It says 5,000, but when they sum it all up, people will say there were 10 to 15,000 people there. There was no food. You don't ever want to be around people when they're hungry and there's no food, right? That's why the disciples said, send them home, get them out of here. But Jesus said, no, you feed them. And they take a few fish, a few loaves of bread, and it says that they were all satisfied, but also there was food left over. That's how it works being connected and in relationship with God, is that you're not only, your needs are not only met, but there's this overflow. There's this expanse. And when you look at things that you really love in life, you'll notice that out of that love, there's an overflow. I love the outdoors. I love to be outside. I love a crisp morning. I love being able to fish. I love just, even if it's just for a moment. Like I will go to the post office on campus just so I can walk outside for a few moments. And the love of that has overflown into a lot of lives. I've been able to share that love for the outdoors, but that's speaking to something deeper, something bigger about how God created us. That when we're connected to his love, that real kind of love, that genuine and unconditional and life-transforming love overflows in abundance. And that's what he's saying, that you come to this well every day and your bucket will be empty every day. But you can be connected to a source that is not only going to satisfy for the moment, but overflow. And that great longing and desire to be connected with God can first and foremost only be satisfied through the person of Jesus. That's why he says statements like John 14:6, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. And so when we look at this story and when you look at this idea about feeling disconnected in the world, and I would be lying if I still don't feel disconnected at moments because of the circumstance and the events that I'm in, but the connection that I have with God has transformed all of those moments. And that's what Jesus is trying to give a glimpse of to this lady in this very unique moment in the middle of a day. You don't go get water in the middle of the day. I don't know if you've had to work hard when it's warm, but just take a note from nature. When do you see animals out the most? You see them early in the morning or you see them late in the evening, because usually it's hot in the middle of the day. You can tell that this lady was in a place of disconnect. She was avoiding, she was trying to hide, she was struggling with that. She may have, I don't know what her face looked like, but I can just imagine that she appeared strong and courageous and trying to do it. But inside, you know how this feels. Inside, you're just falling apart. And inside, there's this deep hunger, this deep thirst for something else. And Jesus is revealing that that's to be connected with me. That's to be connected with God through the person of Jesus Christ. But what's interesting is the story doesn't end there. They go into a little bit more of a conversation. And I'm going to skip down to verse 19 because this is what she says. Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. Now, she's beginning to talk about some questions. Where is worship and where are we allowed to worship? And I think this is a really interesting question because once we have a relationship with God, there really are a lot of opinions and a lot of thoughts about how you can relate with God. And in fact, a lot of times we try to limit what that looks like. You say we have to worship here and they have to worship here. She goes on in verse 21, Jesus says, Woman, believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know, but we worship what we do, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet the time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For they are the kind of worshipers the Father speaks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and truth. And the woman said, I know that Messiah called Christ is coming, and when he comes, he will explain everything. And then Jesus flat out tells her, if she had no question at this point, I, the one speaking to you, I am he. And he's talking about this idea of a relationship with God, that sometimes we, in our human effort, are really good about limiting how we relate with him. And this is what I want to kind of hone in on and bring to you guys as we close out today, is that there are a lot of ways to relate with God. While there's one way for salvation, and there's one way to bring forgiveness and grace into your life through the person of Jesus, once you have that relationship with God, there are a lot of ways in which to relate with him. And it's really interesting in a world that says we love uniqueness. We really have kind of a one-size-fits-all mentality. And it's really, really seen in the church at times. You know, think about it. When you think of the word worship, there are probably two things that come to your mind: singing and preaching, right? Or maybe it's a building. You know, if I were to ask my youth group, where is church, they would point at a building or a place. And, Jesus is really turning things upside down for her here and saying, listen, there's more than one mountain. God's experience with you and the way that he gives you the opportunities to relate with him are probably more grand and vast than you can even imagine. I mean, think about it. Some of the things, how you work and what you are interested in, are probably actually the ways that God has wired you to even relate with him in a unique way. Maybe you love artistic expression. You can look at a painting and it really brings focus to you, or you can even get excited just seeing it, Maybe you're the type that you could sit down and read 2 or 3 books in a day, and you love just to be intellectually challenged all the time. Maybe you have some great experiences when you can really touch things, and you can smell things and see them around you. These are all these sacred pathways that God has really given us to relate with him. And the truth is, you're not really narrowed down to one. You're going to move back and forth between a lot of ways to relate with God. But what I want to really ask you and get you to consider is, how do you draw near to God? And what are you missing out? How are you disconnected from him just because you think there might be one way or one place or one location to experience his love? Romans chapter 1 verse 20 talks about nature. And it talks about that from the beginning of time, all this stuff out here declares that God is who he says he is. That ultimately it says we are without excuse just based off of what creation says about him. And I love creation. I love being outside, and that is a way that God has revealed to me that I can relate with him. The God that has a purpose and a plan for you. The God that even while we were enemies chose to love us and take initiative to show us how to be with him. And so I want to challenge you guys to think today about what that would be, and what is the path maybe that you've been missing that God really wants to utilize in your life to help you relate with him. Now with that, I'll say this real quick caveat, because I think there's a warning that should be said here as well. Jesus makes it clear to the lady, we're going to worship in spirit and truth. He doesn't put a lot of things on rituals or symbols and different things. And while those are all good, it's interesting how sometimes we can begin to worship the path instead of where the path is taking us to. So, for example, I love being outside. You can ask my wife. I tend to figure out in the schedule, how can I be outside? That was really a big purpose of the goal of making a hike once a week, is so that we're disciplined and we actually get outside at some point. And I love it so much that I can easily begin to worship that I can begin to make that what my life is about. That could be sports for you. That could even be your family for you. But when we realize that all of this is not just about those experiences, it's not just about the life that we're in, but about this intimate relationship with a God that loves you and has created you, it's going to blow you away on what He is going to teach you and show you and do with you. And so just a quick warning on that as well. Don't worship the path. Don't worship the mountain, but allow wherever you're at and whatever way God has created you to allow you to relate with Him in a more deep and amazing way. I want to close with this prayer that is found in Colossians chapter 1, because I know this message is both encouraging and challenging at the same time. It's encouraging to know that there is a God that desires and not only has created a way for us to be connected with Him, but created pathways for us to continue to relate with Him and grow in Him. But it's also a challenge to think about how you are disconnected. And maybe today you've realized and have even thought about, I don't really have a relationship with Christ, and I desired that. Maybe you've realized that you've really just relegated God to a few little places in your life, maybe a Sunday morning or a worship area. And so I want to challenge you, it can be challenging to think about what those places are and what that might look like for you. But I want to leave this encouraging word and a prayer that means a lot to me, that Paul prayed this over in the book of Colossians chapter 1. So I'm just going to read this as our prayer to close out today. But it says in verse 9, "For this reason, since the day we have heard about you, we have not stopped praying for you." And I want you to know that the staff, the faculty, those who work at Campbellsville, we never stop praying for you. We are praying for you, and this is my prayer for you today. We continually ask God to fill you with the knowledge of His will through all the wisdom and understanding that the Spirit gives, so that you may live a life worthy of the Lord and please Him in every way, bearing fruit in every good work, growing in the knowledge of God, being strengthened with all power according to His glorious might, so that you may have great endurance and patience. I pray that you draw near to God this week. Have a blessed week. Amen.